What's up, military millionaires? I'm your host, David Perret. Today we have an exciting episode with Hunter Gore in which we talk about college and how to become financially independent and live a financially independent lifestyle while in college. So, this gentleman has a couple side hustles. He's got some stuff going on. He's built up a large emergency fund while in college and already set himself up for success above his peers. And so, we're talking about money tips and strategies that you can use to set yourself up for success even when you're in college, which is a place where a lot of people go and end up in more debt rather than working towards financial independence. So be sure to stay tuned. If this is your first time listening, thanks for joining the community. This podcast is put up every single week for your enjoyment. You can find show notes on militarytomillionaire.com/podcast. Thanks for listening. Now relax and enjoy the show.
You're listening to the Military Millionaire Podcast, a show about real estate investing for the working class. Stay tuned as we explore ways to help you improve your finances, build wealth through real estate, and become a person that is worth knowing.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Dave from Military to Millionaire. I am here with Hunter Gore. He is a sophomore at Clemson University. He is a realtor, a side hustler, and he is barreling down the path to financial freedom. And we've kind of reached out. He reached out to me about a potential deal at one point in real estate. And we kind of worked through some numbers. It didn't work out, which is fine. I mean, that just means we didn't overpay for it. But he's been doing a lot on the side with the realtor side of things, and then social media marketing and stuff. And we just kind of thought it'd be cool to talk about his story because I realized that, I'm getting old now, so I can't relate to like a 19-year-old sophomore in college who's actually learned about finances at that age, because I didn't learn about that till I was like 25, 26. I was just an idiot blowing money on Harleys and stuff. So it's super cool to have you here. Hunter, go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. Well, David, thanks so much again for having me on. It's a real pleasure to be able to talk to your listeners, and, hopefully I can, give them some advice or something, that they can take and actually apply to their lives. So anyway, I guess I'll kind of start from the beginning. I had absolutely zero concept of money until I was about the age of 14 or 15. This is kind of a long story, so I'll try to condense it as best as I can. The story kind of starts back with my dad. My dad's a really awesome guy. I love him to death. But he didn't really learn about money at all from his family. And that kind of correlated into our family whenever he started a specialty compounding pharmacy. So my dad started this compounding pharmacy. He was still working full-time at the hospital. He would work 9 to 6, Monday through Friday, at his specialty compounding pharmacy. Then he would be working on the weekends, like pretty much almost 12-hour shifts on the weekends at the local hospital in the town where I grew up. And so because of that, I didn't really get to see him that often. So I kind of have this part of my childhood that I mean, it's great because my dad had been, able to, provide all of our needs and stuff, but I never really got to see him. So up until the point where I was about 14 or 15, our life had been pretty great. Dad had been making a lot of money. I didn't really know anything about it. But all of a sudden, out of the blue, my dad basically gets a call from I think it's the FDA, basically saying that some doctor is suing him because he made a specialty drug, and I don't know all technical terms and anything, but he made a specialty drug for some patient. Basically, the patient got infected, and basically the patient sued the doctor, and the doctor said, "Oh no, it's not my fault. It's the meds or whatever." So anyway, my dad ended up getting sued because of that, lost the pharmacy, and at the time he was trying to expand the pharmacy and grow. Trying to develop the business and the asset to be something bigger and better. At the time, in order to expand, he had taken out right shy of about $300,000 worth of business debt. And so because you have to have a personal co-signer on the business debt, it was obviously assigned to his name. So whenever the business fell apart, all that money then went back on him. So I really didn't have any concept of money before this kind of big falling out with his company happened. But my dad was out of work for about 6 months. And so, it was hard coming home from school. I would see him, just trying to find work, trying to, find something to be able to come up with and make money, without having to pull money out of savings and retirement and stuff. So anyway, to make a really long story short, it's been a really unique experience to see that coming through on this side. My parents are really awesome. Most parents would get divorced, or most married people would get divorced from that. But thankfully, my parents are still together. They're awesome, and I'm really thankful for all that they've done and given for me. But that really big experience kind of shaped my view of money. It made me think a lot more about what I'm actually spending money on, how much I'm saving. Do I need to take out any debt in order to get this asset to produce money for me? And so just kind of building off of that, I went into college not entirely sure what I wanted to do with my life. I started out as a computer science major at Clemson, ended up actually failing the class in the first semester, absolutely hated it. So I ended up changing my major completely. I was like, okay, this is over. And I was kind of debating between either computer science or finance as majors going in, just because of what my family had been through and my kind of eagerness to learn more about money, so that something like that wouldn't happen to me, or not that we can control everything, but to limit the risk of something like that happening to me. So because of that, I was like, okay, you know what, this computer science thing isn't working. So I switched over to finance. And ever since then, I started reading a book, obviously not required by school or anything, but it's a book I think a lot of people hopefully have read. If not, I would definitely consider reading it. It's Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. It's a really great book. And in the book, obviously, it talked about so many different topics, from, the difference between the rich and the poor, how to build wealth, what real estate is. It talked a little bit about taxation, some side hustles and stuff. But basically, the book helped transform my mindset from the stuff that I had learned going through watching my dad's business crumble and watching them still having to pay off debt, to just helping to continue to grow my just thoughts and the way that I viewed money to this day. So that's kind of, I guess, my background and my experience with money. And I personally believe that heavily plays into the decisions that I make today, the investments that I make today, the way that I structure my life to make sure that I can provide for myself, Lord willing, and that I can end up trying to limit my risk later on down the road. So I guess with that being said, I'm 19 now. That event happened about 4 or 5 years ago, so it's a little on past this, but still learning lots from it. I've thankfully been able to save up an emergency fund in college over the past 4 months, actually, which I think is something really, really unique. I know a lot of college students can't necessarily say that, and not trying to brag or anything, but I think it's just impressive to be able to save money in college regardless. But yeah, I've been looking into a couple of different side hustles to start to save more money for real estate investing, and just for any other type of emergency or any other type of investment, whether that not be real estate, it could be stock market, something like that in the future. But yeah, I've kind of been exploring the realm of side hustles, particularly with the social media marketing. David, I know you mentioned that in my bio earlier. And then I am also, in about 2 or 3 weeks, I should be a fully licensed real estate agent in the state of South Carolina. So I'm almost there. I've got to go back and retake the state portion of the test, but I'll do that and apply and stuff, and should be good to go. But yeah, I'm looking to get rolling here in 2019, being a realtor, looking to pay off the rest of my school by being a real estate agent. And so, yeah, just lots to look forward to. And I appreciate you having me here on the show, David.
No, absolutely. So I think the realtor thing, we kind of talked about that previously, and that's a good side hustle. There's a lot of guys successful. And the cool thing is that being a college student, you can, focus on that you can really hustle during the summer. But you can do very well in real estate. And then even when you're like a full-time student, during school time, you could, if you're too busy to take on a client, you can refer the business out to someone else and still make a split of the commission, and that's more passive. And we can talk about that in a little bit, but I'm kind of curious to hear, like, what kind of social media marketing are you doing? That's like a niche that I have stumbled into as I'm having to learn how to grow my stuff, but it's intriguing to me.
Yeah, great question. So I primarily like to work with people who have small personal brands, like yourself, or they could do a lot of network marketing, fitness, what have you. Or I'll work with very small companies who are looking to grow and increase traffic, either from social media onto a website, or from email marketing campaigns onto a website to increase sales, to increase more personal coaching sessions, whatever that the need for the customer or client might be, and really just trying to make sure that we're able to kind of build like a funnel almost. We're taking all the basic social media stuff is up here. You have a lot of different data points for a lot of different customers of all niches and groups, and trying to bring that and funnel that down here to how could we get that into a business, how can we create customers out of that, how can we create relationships from a customer standpoint to a business standpoint. So that's I guess that was kind of a really broad sense, but really just trying to make sure that we're using social media as it's starting to continue on the trend of having more and more users each year, especially in 2019. Just making sure that we're able to utilize all of our resources, especially with email marketing too. That's something that's very useful for generating leads and coaching clients and stuff. But being able to generate that into sales ultimately.
Are you, is there a certain platform you're working with specifically? Do you have like Instagram, Facebook, the mix, or is it like specific to one?
Yeah. So I actually have, and not to give out too much details on what I'm doing with software, just because sometimes I don't have liberty to give out that software names and stuff. But through the software, I'm able to integrate with platforms like Instagram, Facebook. I can even do Twitter, LinkedIn. There's options to do YouTube. It's a little harder to do the social media marketing through YouTube unless you're just kind of posting content there. But you can do things like Pinterest, Tumblr. Trying to think, LinkedIn. I don't know if I mentioned that one, but I mean, pretty much all of the bigger social media, with the exception of Snapchat. Snapchat's a little different animal than especially Instagram and Facebook, as Instagram and Facebook are primarily becoming two of the bigger lead sources for new customers and clients. But really just trying to figure out whatever the customer's needs are and seeing how we can best address that and end up driving traffic to them.
Yeah, Snapchat's definitely, I've been trying to mess around with the business platform, but it's just, I don't know. It's not as easy to integrate to. It's much more of an intentional thing. Like you actually have to, I don't know. I'm not as much of a fan. I haven't actually published an ad on it yet, just because every time I try to go through the process, it's just kind of annoying. So I end up just going back to Instagram. And plus Snapchat it targets a much younger audience than, I mean, I have a young audience, but not like, I mean, in Snapchat you can be you can be hitting like teenagers and high school kids and junior high and whatever, like people, all kinds of people have Snapchat, and I'm like, I don't need a 13-year-old to be reading my stuff, so it's not super important to me. That being said, I like that you touched on LinkedIn, because that's a social platform that a lot of people don't think of as a social platform. They think of it as where you go to find a job. But the reality is that you can do very well on LinkedIn as a social platform. It's just a different demographic and a different style of what you're, posting. I won't go on LinkedIn and post like outfit of the day, but I'll go on LinkedIn and share a video that I made or an interesting blog post or whatever. And it does pretty well.
Yeah. And David, I'm glad that you mentioned that. LinkedIn is really something I've been trying to incorporate more, especially with my personal brand, as I'm trying to get the word out more. But in my opinion, what I've seen is that LinkedIn is very similar to Facebook in the way that it loads news feeds and, are different articles that people are sharing, but it's almost like you're taking Facebook and basically adding a whole entire business side to it, and that's basically what LinkedIn is. You're able to post content that would be related to your personal brand, to a small business that you have, or even a big business, and you're able to let your network, your other friends who might be in the same market or in similar markets, just to be able to get the word out about what you're doing and just kind of share and grow your network that way as well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So let's see here. So I guess my first question I'd probably want to touch on with you, since you're on the financial independence journey, but you're also in college, which a lot of people find. I mean, we hear all the pros and cons of minimum wage and everything. My argument is generally that your income isn't your problem; it's your expenses.
Yeah.
That's not always true. I mean, obviously, you can't get rich on $20,000 a year, but at the same time, you can't get rich on $100,000 a year if you spend it. So, what would be like your advice? I guess for you, I would say for a peer, like someone, a freshman, sophomore college that's looking to not come out of school with hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt. And I mean, we can touch on student loans, but like more what you do with the money you do make to make it, wherever you want to take
Yeah, sure. I'm glad you asked that, David. Honestly, I feel like this could even apply to anybody who's even in high school. They might be listening, or anybody who's in college, grad school, whatever. I think the most important thing is to make sure that you have a job. I've noticed that a lot of people in college do not have a job, and honestly, I think that is not the smart way to go. For me, I didn't have a job at all last year, freshman year, so I started having a job this year. Honestly, I've seen my grades improve slightly. It's not been a huge improvement, but they have improved some because it's forced me to have more and better time management. I know a lot of people, especially of my generation, don't have a lot of time management because there's a lot of lack of concentration. With new improvements in technology, so many people are addicted, to their phones, or however you want to put it and phrase it. There's a lack of attention span there, and so I think having a job in college really helps you to be time oriented and to have much better time management as to when you need to study, when you need to do work, when you need to hang out with friends and socialize, when you need to have downtime, stuff like that. So I think that's been definitely very, very important to me. The other thing I would say is that definitely utilize any kind of financial aid you can possibly get. I know a lot of colleges, states, and even the federal government will give certain financial aid based on, maybe parents pay, for whatever they make at W-2 or job or whatever through the FAFSA. There's lots of different financial aid you can just get through the university. There's different private funding. So, I mean, I definitely say try to utilize those resources if you can, but ultimately, at the end of the day, is just get a job and make sure that you're consistently saving your income. Now, I have my own apartment. It's off campus, and so I have to pay some for rent, utilities, stuff like that, food, gas. So I have worked on getting it better, but I started at about a 25% savings rate. And I built it up to where I average anywhere between a 40 and a 50% savings rate, which, I mean, it might seem really, really, kind of crazy, but I mean, I don't spend that much money on food. I mean, I might spend maybe $100 on food a week. It's probably more like 75. And just because, I live around a college, I don't have to drive around a lot. So, I mean, I might fill up with gas once a month, that might be $40, $50 a month. I mean, the rest is going to utilities, which, there are obviously articles and stuff you can figure out online how to limit utilities. And then, you have fixed expenses like rent. But I mean, ultimately, it's just like, how can you sit there and cut your expenses? How can you still live the life you want to live, still have the things you need to have, but make sure that you're cutting out everything that you don't need to be spending money on? So like, I used to be, and, not to put this in a weird frame of light, but I used to be, really into shoes and, making sure that I always look good, was the best dressed. And that especially played in coming through from high school on into freshman year of college. And I went back and tracked how much I spent on, clothes and, trying to look good and impress people freshman year of college. Just over I think it's like 9 or 10 month period, I spent about $2,000 on stuff that whole entire freshman year. So, I mean, it's just crazy looking back, like if you just change the way that you view money, and, in terms of having to spend it, because like if you spend your money on, clothes or something, you're delaying yourself, financial freedom so many years down the road, or you're delaying yourself saving up for your goal of your emergency fund, or saving up money for down payment on a property. I mean, if you think about it, most college students are going to end up buying a property within the next 3 to 5 years when they graduate. And it's really hard if you don't start saving now. I mean, because whenever you get out on your own, the first year, you're probably going to be making a good bit of money, and you're probably going to blow a good bit of money, just because that's the first time you've ever really had money. So it's important to get instilled in you early on the habits of saving, even if you don't save more than, 20%. I mean, there's different ways you can break down like how much you should be saving based on how much you make and, where you want to be and all. But ultimately, it's just how can you cut down on your expenses? How much can you save, and how much can you put toward your future?
Yeah, and I think 50%, 50% is reasonable. A lot of people think, and I mean, obviously the 40%, 50% depends on your expenses. But I mean, yeah, we're putting away 45, 50% right now. And this is just, I would assume, I guess before I say this, does your $100 a week for food, is that kind of including like when you eat out once in a while?
Yeah.
Okay. Cause that makes sense. Cause I was like, holy smokes, I'm doing amazing. So we, family of 4, so I have a 2-year-old and a 10-year-old, and in Hawaii where prices are like outrageous, even though it's a little better on base, but I mean, gallon of milk is still like $6 here. Even on base. Off base, it's like $8 or $9. It's insane.
Oh, wow.
We changed our budget around like 3 months ago, and we budgeted $400 a month, so $100 a week for food. And I have been able to save at least $100 of that at the end of every single month. So we're spending like $300 a month on food, but that's not including the dining out. We gave ourselves like $50, $60 a week for eating out. But man, like, yeah, you're right. Like that's like those two things. And whenever I hear people talk about how they don't have any money, I'm always like, okay, like the first thing I do is I'll look and I'll be like, name brand clothing. And then the second thing I'll do, and I say this wearing a super fancy looking Hawaiian shirt, but this is like $10 at Ross. So, not too bad. Yeah. Like the first thing I do is I ask them like, well, how many pairs of shoes do you own? All those questions. And then I'm like, okay, well, how much do you eat out? Because especially if you're a single guy, like a young Marine, you have a chow hall. You already you eat there for free. It's already out of your paycheck as like this untaxed benefit. So like when people tell me they eat out 3 times a week, 5 times a week, I'm like, that you could literally eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner 7 days a week for free, right? And they're like, well, it's not the best food. I'm like, that's not the point. Like the point is you could be saving all this money and you could eat out once a week, and holy smokes. And then the other one, and this is the one that, so yeah, like clothing is a huge one. Nobody really cares.
Exactly.
But they do. I mean, people care, and it's a big one. But like, you can't look rich if you want to be rich. You gotta save the money, and then the food, and then the other one that I see all the time, and I'm sure this is just as bad in college as it is in the military, is the booze. And holy smokes, like if you're not of age, play that card and be like, not old enough to buy it. Sorry, I can't participate. I can't give you money. Whatever. And then if if you're going to drink it underage, I'm not going to advocate for that. But if you're going to drink it underage, at least you're not paying for it.
Exactly.
Exactly. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, you definitely see that in college. I'll be the first to say I don't drink, and I don't really plan to drink. I mean, it's never really been, something I've been interested in. But I have tons of buddies who would go blow anywhere between, $100 to $200, at a bar, just buying, alcohol for people, or even themselves. I mean, it's just crazy. You could take that and, that's only one night,
Gets nuts.
So it's just crazy. But, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, I did want to go back to what you said earlier about food. I think it's been really cool to kind of look back over the past 6 months, at how much I've spent on food. I've noticed that whenever I don't meal prep, whenever I just very casually go out to the grocery store and buy stuff, whenever I don't actually write down what I need and don't need, there will be a lot of times when I'll be like, oh, okay, well, I didn't go buy this at the store and I don't feel like going out to the store, but I'll just, run down to Chipotle, Moe's, or, whatever kind of fast food and just go buy, $10 worth of food. When if you bought $10 worth of groceries, that equals at least typically anywhere between, for me, at least 3 and 5 meals, depending on what the item might be. So that's something that I found very helpful for me, is to meal prep. Not only is it typically more healthier, but it will also hopefully save you money, especially on your groceries.
Yeah, absolutely agree. All right, let's see here. And before I get into that question, I guess I'd ask, because we're talking budgets, which is such a boring subject for so many people, but like, what advice would you give on budgeting? Like, I don't want like not a 20-minute like detail, pull out your spreadsheet and walk me through your numbers, but like, what would you tell someone if they ask like, well, how do you budget for your money?
Yeah. David, that's a great question. Actually, funny enough, I just wrote a blog post about that. I can't remember if I already posted it, excuse me, or not. But the biggest thing that I've seen, especially listening to a lot of bigger podcasts, as I'm a huge fan of their podcasts and their money podcasts as well, is I keep seeing a very reoccurring theme. And the reoccurring theme is to track your spending. And if you actually sit down and track your spending on what exactly you purchase, it'll help better correlate, as to like, what do you spend money on yearly? Because, like, obviously there are certain things that I spend money on each month, and then all of a sudden I'll have a random reoccurring charge, in the beginning of September, I'll get charged for Amazon Prime, and I'll get a 50, 70, whatever the charge is, and then I'll get a random charge in July for something, So it's just being able to track those throughout a whole entire year, and then deciding what you need and don't need, and cutting out everything you don't need. And that'll hopefully free up a little bit more money that you can put towards savings. And then just trying to find other ways you can sit there and cut down on, anything else that might remain there. So honestly, that'd probably be my biggest piece of advice, would just be to make sure that you're tracking your spending. I don't know if there's a really good app on your phone for that. Actually, funny enough, I was listening to the Bigger Pockets Money podcast this morning. They were talking about a very similar topic. And they said that there was somebody who did a Google form, and whenever they put in the Google form and they'd submit it on their phone, it'd automatically go into a spreadsheet and show them, based on, whatever category they selected, how much they spent money on. So, like if they went out to eat, they spent, $30 out to eat at a restaurant, they could track that and, see that at the end of the month and be able to track their expenses that way. So that's probably my best piece of advice on budgeting.
Yeah, I think it's very easy to lie to yourself about what you're spending money on, especially, and it's honestly, it's easier when you have a family because, it's like, oh yeah, we spent $30 out to eat. Well, no, it was like 50, but we did whatever. And I didn't track for a while, and I thought I was doing really good with my budgeting. And about 4 months ago, I sat down and redid my budget and got serious. Like, actually did the whole, envelope full of cash type of thing where I like leave my credit card in the house, and the only card I have with me is my business card, and trying to be very intentional about it. And like, holy smokes, I added 20% to what I had been saving. I mean, I legitimately was able to increase my allotment to my retirement fund by, I think I jumped it, put in 22% right now. I probably jumped it 12%, 12 or 13%. And then
Wow.
I also increased like another $500 a month going into the business account. And all of that is just because I was legitimately buying, like, ooh, yeah, that'll be useful. Click, on Amazon or going to Taco Bell or whatever. And as soon as we sat it down and started tracking what we were spending on, I mean, and it doesn't even have to be like I would recommend tracking every day. I'm not as good about that. But even if you just like started your budget by looking at the last month and saying, like, what did I spend in just last month? Okay, well, holy crap, I don't need this, and just like shrunk it down a little bit, you'll save money, even if you're not strict about it. And we still have, like, I have an envelope for entertainment/beer, and if I want to buy beer, I do buy beer, but I just not as much as I once might have. But that's probably for the better. So
Yeah. And David, I think it is a really good point to note that you can still buy things for yourself that you enjoy. Just whenever you're cutting back on things that you wouldn't normally need that you happen to spend money on anyway, So it's, even if you want to go buy, like, let's say a nice luxurious car, they talk about this in Rich Dad Poor Dad, but you buy the asset first and then let the asset buy the liability, the, luxury car or whatever. And
absolutely,
that's kind of getting off from budgeting, but just coming back to the point that you can still have nice things. You just make sure that that's not a constant reoccurring expense, or that's not something that you that won't absolutely help you, benefit you, or make you happier.
Yeah, 100% agreed. There's a lot of ways to make it work if you're smart about it. The thing is just being intentional, and then understanding that the goal is to be rich, not to look rich.
Exactly.
I think that's a huge, in fact, I almost did a YouTube video, but I decided not to, because I thought that it was I figured that it was a polarific enough that I don't know if I wanted the attention I was going to get from it if it went viral. But the title was going to be something to the effect of like, what rap teaches us about money. And it was basically going to just like go through and post videos of guys who might have made it in the scene already or might not have, but are wearing like $20,000 worth of crap, or have, $1 million car and this, that, and the other, and like showing like, well, this is what it's like. It's all about consumerism, and just saying like, look, these guys may have made money, but whether they did or not, they're showing you like this wonderful world and just talk about the conception or the misconception that like looking, because we all know that guy who looks like he's got it all together and then he doesn't. It's just like it's show.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, there's a bunch of good books out there on it, but like, holy smokes, people spend so much money trying to press other people. What's the quote? I can't remember who said it, but we spend our entire lives, spending money on things we don't need to impress people we don't like.
We don't care about.
Yeah. And it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
that's true.
I mean, it's definitely a very accurate quote. And honestly, you see that so much in college. You know, I mean, people will try to, you know, eat at the nice restaurants just to make it look like they have money, you know, or they'll, you know, spend money on clothes they don't need, or, you know, go out to, you know, do whatever. I mean, like, honestly, I see so many of my friends taking, you know, random trips out, you know, in like these insane places that, like, I don't even see most adults taking trips out to. You know, it's like random places in the Pacific, you know, like exotic islands, like to like the Caymans and stuff. It's like, who actually does that, you know? But, you know, college students, so go figure. So
yeah, I try to, and I've been the guy who's had the fancy cars and the motorcycle and got the tattoos, and I've been there and I've done that, and I got all the guns. And was not always decent with my money, but now I try to live by the mantra of like, look, if I get rid of this car now and I'm smart and I struggle through now, then 10 years from now I'll have a nicer car, and you know, and it'll be more affordable. So
exactly,
it's all about mindset. All right, so. We're going to transition into the next question, which I like to ask, which is like, what is one resource, course, website, whatever that you recommend to anyone getting started, you know, in finances or just as advice in general? You mentioned the Bigger Pockets Money Show. So they go ahead and don't mention that again. Let's make it.
Ooh,
it's a good one.
Ooh. Yeah, it is. I feel like this is mentioned a lot. This is more, I guess, specifically for like the FI community, but Mr. Money Mustache blog is a really good resource. I mean, it's probably mentioned by tons of people and tons of different podcasts and stuff, but I mean, it's really good. It covers a lot of different topics. You know, you can get into budgeting, you know, or really anything. I guess to go back, Bigger Pockets itself, not necessarily the money podcast, but Bigger Pockets is a great place to learn about real estate specifically, and how you can use the investment of real estate to really be a catalyst in your life to create that wealth that you're looking for. So that's a really good resource. I'm trying to think. I don't know a lot of necessarily like online blogs or anything else besides those two. Those two kind of just pop up as first. I would definitely suggest reading. I've been very diligent about reading this year. I've read about 13 and a half business or finance specifically related books. And I would definitely say that's really kind of helped spurred my thinking into more of the FI direction, you know, trying to incorporate some different side hustles, trying to think of different ways I can scale back my expenses, how I can save better, how I can better budget. I definitely say reading probably first and foremost helps with that. And there's obviously tons of different books I could, you know, recommend to you on that. So.
Yeah, reading's huge. I mean, I always say the best investment is investing in yourself. At least before you start investing in other stuff. I like Mr. Money Mustache, and I like the fact, so was it Pete Adney, I think is his name? I might have messed that up, so if I did, I'm sorry. But that's a guy who's doing very well financially now with no job. His blog does well, his platform does well, his courses do well, like everything does very well. And the guy still rides his bike everywhere he goes. Like, you want to talk about somebody who's living what they preach. The guy's doing quite well, and he's built a huge nest egg. He's totally retired. He just does whatever he wants for fun, and he still lives very frugally. And I would rather have that, where you're designing your lifestyle and able to do things but not necessarily driving the Bugatti, than, you know, the guy who drives a Bugatti but can't go on vacation. Which exactly. Bugatti's high enough price. There's probably not too many people who can afford one and not a vacation, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, it's definitely the idea that you can not necessarily control your life, but you can control your schedule. You know, you can control the things that you do that will ultimately bring you the most happiness, you know, the most satisfaction from doing it. So I think that's good that you brought it up. I do want to go back. As you mentioned earlier about the self-improvement and investing in yourself. David, I don't know how many listeners you have who might be, you know, teens or 20s, or I guess really any time in their 20s, even on up to their early 30s. I would definitely suggest heavily investing in yourself and in your personal education and personal development. whether that's reading, whether that's going to seminars, going to, like you went to FinCon, I'm trying to think, any other course you can take, something that will just benefit you long term, because with you just investing in yourself, you're going to see so many returns so many years down the road that you won't necessarily see right now. So it's not really an investment for the now. It's more an investment for the future, for the long term. And I know there are people like Grant Cardone who really preach like invest in yourself, invest in yourself, invest in yourself. And I know there are many other people who kind of preach that as well. But honestly, that would probably be one of my biggest pieces of advice outside of looking into real estate or, starting side hustles, is just invest in yourself. At the end of the day, you are your biggest asset.
I agree. Yeah. And the earlier you do that, the more it'll compound everything. I mean, I've read a ton of books in the last few years, and that is what changes the mindset. That's what gets you, like you can spend a whole lifetime trying to learn stuff, or you can read a book and learn from somebody who spent a whole lifetime learning stuff.
Exactly.
And I think that's a huge force multiplier, as we call it. All right. So I'm going to use that as your parting idea, big advice, because that was solid. I mean, that's everything you could ever ask for. So Hunter, where can people get a hold of you if they're trying to get a hold of you?
Yeah, sure. So I have a website and a podcast, blog and podcast. It's www.thefinancialhunter.com. David, I can send you the stuff to put that in the show notes. And then you can also find me on Instagram at The Financial Hunter. Love to connect with you. Feel free to shoot me a message. Would love to chat with you, see, how I can help you, and see how, we can, end up conquering our goals and pushing forward. So.
Yeah, if you want to shoot me that in an email, and I can't believe I'm going to say this while we're still recording, but a photo. I need a photo of yourself for the thumbnail. Okay. But also, and I want to link to this in the show notes, so that's why I'm saying it on the recording. Can you send me the blog post specifically as an additional URL? So whether it's scheduled or not, this will probably come out before it posts. But I'd be really curious to send the readers to your post on budgeting. I think that'll be very beneficial.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'll definitely send that over to you.
Awesome. Sounds good. Well, Hunter, unless you got anything else, I think, people probably don't know that I recorded for you before this. So we've been on the phone for basically 2 hours now. Yeah,
two or 3 hours. So.
And I'm sure one of us needs to eat eventually. So I think it's been swell, and I look forward to staying in touch. We'll have to do another one of these later on down the road and see where the financial independence journey is taking you, and then see how the realtor stuff's going.
Yeah, for sure. And David, thank you so much for having me on. It's been a blast, and I definitely hope that I was able to impart some knowledge to your listeners.
No, I think this will be beneficial. I like finances, and I focus a lot on trying to find real estate guys, and I talk about finances stuff, but I forget, I can't relate to the freshman in college right now. I'm the old geezer with the mustache. Yeah. Not as old as I look, everybody, but awesome. Thanks, brother. Have a great day.
Thanks so much, David. You too.